Let us start. Yeah. So all of us know this algorithm. Okay, this is the 2015 algorithm of NRP. So we have now AAP has come out with 2020 algorithm, which is almost pretty similar to this algorithm, except for a small change, which they have included. Consider emergency UVC insertion while doing coordinated chest compression and ventilation. So the rest of the part will remain same only. So I'm going to discuss the old NRP algorithm and all the steps in it. And finally, when I conclude, I will just mention the changes which have been incorporated in the recent NRP, which may be important for exam point of view for all of you. So whenever you discuss about NRP, I mean, even if you wake up, if you are woken up in the middle of the night, you should be able to rattle out the algorithm. That's what we expect as examiners. So all of you have to have this printout stuck in your study room, and you have to wake up on NRP every day so that you don't make any mistakes during your examinations, because we don't expect any sort of mistakes in NRP. So when you start resuscitation, I mean, top most important requirement is that you need to do antenatal counseling. So if time permits, I mean, you have to talk to the mother, identify the risk factors, and put the family, mother and family, into comfort. Team briefing is important. Team briefing means you elaborate the team. So you identify the team leader, identify the helps who have first and second, assign their roles, and then do a proper equipment check. So then comes the event, the most important event, birth. And the questions asked after birth, we will discuss later. So first, let us discuss what is team briefing. So antenatal counseling, all of you know, you have to ask about the gestational age. We have to ask about the amniotic fluid, whether it is clear or not. So previously it used to be how many babies, whether singleton or twins are there, and any additional risk factors. These were the 4 questions you were expected to ask in the antenatal counseling, antenatal related risk factors. Now the recent NRP has removed how many babies, and they have incorporated umbilical cord management plan in the antenatal assessment. Okay, so team briefing is you discuss the plan for resuscitation. You assess the perinatal risk factors, identify a team leader, delegate the tasks, identify who will document events as they occur, determine what supplies and equipment will be needed, and identify how to call for additional help. So this is what is team briefing. So once the baby is born, you should not have confusion on what you have been assigned to. Okay, so somebody should take care of airway, somebody should do chest compression, the other should be preparing medications for administration if required. So this is the equipment checklist, which all of you should know what are all the things to be, kind of included for providing warmth. So you should have preheated warmer, warm towels or blankets, at least 2, 3 in number, temperature sensor, cap for the baby, plastic bag or plastic wrap if the baby is less than 32 weeks gestation, thermal mattress again for babies less than 32 weeks gestation. For clearing airway, you need to have suction machine, suction catheter, bulb syringe, and meconium aspirator. You need to have stethoscope. For ventilating the child, you need to have either a self-inflating bag. You need to have oxygen air source. So it is preferable to have blender for babies less than 35 weeks gestation. You should have adequate size mask. You need to have a feeding tube if you have to continue ventilation for a long time. For oxygenation, you need to have free flow oxygen available. Pulse oximeter with sensor, it is very important. It is must to have in labor rooms nowadays. And target oxygen saturation table. So for intubation, you need to have adequate size of laryngoscopes, blades. You need to have endotracheal tubes, and then tape to fix the endotracheal tube. And for medication, if it is required, you need to have 1 in 10,000 adrenaline, normal saline. So other than these 2 drugs, you don't have to have any other medications to be administered at birth. And you need to have umbilical venous catheter, because that is the safer and effective way of administering medications. And we need to remember that ECG is now recommended for assessing heart rate when you are resuscitating a baby, especially when you start PPV, not when PPV. I mean, more so important when you are providing chest compression to the baby. Right, so that completes the first box: antenatal counseling, team briefing, and equipment check. So now the event has happened. So baby is born. So we need to note the time of birth, and then you need to ask three questions. One is whether the baby is term, how is the tone of the baby, whether the baby is breathing or crying, right? So if answer to all three of these questions is yes, okay, it's a term baby, tone, and baby is breathing well, then the baby will stay with the mother for routine care. So routine care will include warmth, maintaining normal temperature of the baby. So it is important to maintain normal temperature, not only to provide warmth at birth. So you should not provide warmth at birth and then subsequently let the baby to remain in, air conditioned room without proper coverings. Okay, so maintaining normal temperature is important. It is insisted. Positioning the airway, clear secretion if needed. So you can just dry the secretions, wipe out the secretions. You dry the baby with the baby on the mother's abdomen and then do ongoing evaluation. So for such babies, you need to delay cord clamping by at least 30 seconds. That is what is recommended. So for term babies, you should delay cord clamping by at least for 30 seconds, preferably for a minute or so. Okay. So this is what you will do if the answer to all three questions are yes. So if the answer to any one of this question is no, then you will go down the algorithm. So when you go down the algorithm, you are expected to do what is called as initial steps. So let us, this is again the part of the routine care. Like if the answer to all three is yes, so you will provide skin to skin contact, deliver the baby onto the mother's abdomen, and then do the routine care, whatever was described earlier. So if the answer is no, then you will go for initial steps of newborn care. So what are the components of initial care steps? So first is to provide warmth to the baby. So how will you provide warmth to the baby? By using a radiant warmer, which is set at manual mode, and then you say pre-warm the linen in that. Okay, so keep the warmer on for at least 20 minutes before you receive the baby, and thereby ensuring that the baby is received in a warm environment. Okay, so next is positioning the head and neck. Clear secretions only if needed. Don't think that clearing secretion is a ritual. Suctioning is not routinely recommended. If the baby is vigorous and you don't see any obvious secretions in the mouth, you don't have to cry. You don't have to suction. Then you will dry and stimulate. So there is just some reshuffling of this order in initial steps. As per the new NRP, the changes I will discuss in the end. So the first step I elaborated in detail. So you need to know about the positioning of the baby. So you need to know that the baby should be in what is called a sniffing position. So sniffing position is just a mild extension of the neck. So the baby should not be in hyperextended position. Baby should not be there in flexed position also. The sniffing position can be facilitated by putting a shoulder roll under the shoulder blades of the baby. Okay, so that will help to maintain the head of the baby, head and neck in slight extension, which will help in opening up the airway and maintain the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and larynx in a straight line, so that the airway is open for the baby. And if at all baby needs any help, such as positive pressure ventilation, it will be facilitated easily. So clearing airways, as I mentioned, it is not a ritual. Not all babies would require suctioning. So if you see visible secretions and if you think baby is, airway is getting obstructed because of secretion, let it be meconium, let it be clear secretions, then only you need to provide suction. So whenever you provide suction, you turn the baby to one side, let the secretions pool onto the inside of one side of the cheek, and then suction it. Okay, whether you can use bulb sucker, you can use wall mounted suction, you can use Dilly's mucus trap. Okay, whatever is available with you, make sure that the suction pressure is set at 80 to 100, not more than that. Okay, and you will suction always mouth first and then nose. M comes first after N. M comes before N. So always remember that sequence. Okay. So you will suction mouth first and then nose. You will turn the head to one side of the body, one side, and you will allow the secretions to pool on inside of the cheek before sucking. So don't blindly thrust the catheter too much deep into the pharynx, because that will stimulate the posterior pharynx, will cause vagal stimulation and can cause bradycardia. So unless indicated, suction is contraindicated. Okay, right. So drying a baby, again, it is important. You have to use a pre-warm linen. You should dry the baby head first, trunk and body next, and then legs, extremities in just 2 to 3 wipes. You should dry the baby and make sure that you remove the wet linen immediately and put the baby, place the baby on the dry warm linen which is lying underneath. That's why you need to have at least 2 to 3 pre-warmed linen, so that the baby does not lie in the wet linen which has been used for drying the baby. Because baby, if it lies in a cool surface, baby will lose a lot of heat by conduction. That will lead to hypothermia. Okay, so this is what the sequence which is described. So just to recap: warm, position the head and neck, clear secretion if needed, dry, and then comes the stimulation part. So stimulation, how will you do? All of you know how to do stimulation. So it is either by flicking the sole, okay, or rubbing the back. Okay, don't slap the sole, don't slap the baby, don't hang the baby upside down. Okay, these are all contraindicated. You can either flick the sole or rub the back. Now people are moving towards more of rubbing the back than flicking the sole also. So when you rub the back also, it is just 1 or 2 strong rubs. You should not keep on rubbing the baby and delay initiation of positive pressure ventilation. So people will keep on rub the baby, they would not initiate positive pressure ventilation, thinking that that will cause, baby to cry. So please remember that delaying PPV by 30 seconds will increase the risk of death or prolonged hospital admission by 16%. Okay, so you should not delay PPV. If with 1 or 2 stimulation, if baby is not crying, please go ahead and start positive pressure ventilation. Okay, right. So that completes our initial steps. So initial step is not complete without assessment of the response to your initial steps. So you should always do an assessment. Okay, so whether the baby at the end of initial steps, whether the baby is having apnea or gasping, or whether heart rate is below 100 per minute. Okay, if any one is there, then you have to go down the algorithm. Okay, if the answer to all three are no, the baby is not apneic, baby is not gasping, breathing well, and heart rate is more than 100, then you have to assess whether the baby is having a labored breathing, right? So what do you mean by labored breathing? So baby has tachypnea, grunting, and retractions. Okay, so baby is breathing well, but the baby is having tachypnea, retractions, and grunting. So what is persistent cyanosis? Babies seem to have central cyanosis, not only acrocyanosis. So if you have pulse oximeter, you look at the target oxygen saturation, which is displayed. So if the our target oxygen saturation is less than the recommended target, yes, how to do position, clear the airway. So correct the position of the baby, clear the airway, monitor the SpO2. Supplemental oxygen may be required in this baby. So if this baby is a term baby, about 35 weeks, it does provide oxygen. If the baby is a preterm baby, baby may require CPAP. So how will we provide supplemental oxygen? So supplemental oxygen can be provided by using your plain oxygen tube like this. You can hold free flow oxygen in front of mouth and nose of the baby. So you can also provide oxygen mask. You can connect the free flow tube to the mask nozzle of the mask, and then put that mask snugly, not tightly, onto the baby's face. You can use a flow inflating bag if one is available. So you can use a T-piece resuscitator, but here you will hold the mask not in contact with the baby, but slightly away from the baby. Or you can use a open reservoir. Like if you have a self-inflating bag with the open reservoir, like a corrugated tube, you can use that free end of the tail end of the open reservoir. Okay, you should not use mask of the self-inflating bag to provide free flow oxygen, because free flow oxygen will not flow through a self-inflating bag unless you compress or press the bag. Okay, so you can use the tail end of the open corrugated reservoir for providing free flow oxygen. So this is how you provide free flow oxygen. So how will you provide CPAP? CPAP can be provided if you have a flow inflating bag, or you have a T-piece, or self-inflating bag with fixed with a PEEP valve can be used. So usually we use T-piece resuscitator to provide CPAP for preterm babies in labor room. Okay, fine. So now we have completed this part of. Now, if we at the end of initial steps, our assessment says whether there is apnea, gasping, or heart rate below 100 per minute, then we will go down the algorithm and start positive pressure ventilation. Remember, the first golden minute will include positive pressure ventilation also. So one cycle of positive pressure ventilation should be completed within the first golden minute. So always you remember that you will start, whenever you start positive pressure ventilation, you will connect pulse oximeter, and if ECG is available, it is preferable, right? Fine. So if the answer to this question is yes, so we have started positive pressure ventilation. So we have put a pulse oximeter. So we will connect ECG monitor if it is available, right? Okay. So now let us look at the positive pressure ventilation, how to provide. What are the steps of positive pressure ventilation? What are the devices used? So as we described earlier in free flow daily free section, so you can use either a flow inflating bag or a this is the self-inflating bag, which we commonly use in for resuscitation. Flow inflating bag only will be used by anesthetist. It is not available in any of the labor rooms as such in our NICUs in our country. You can use T-piece. T-piece is being preferred more often nowadays, because you have control over PIP and PEEP, and it is less tiring when compared to using self-inflating bag. Okay, so let us not dwell into the details of each and everything, but you are expected to know what are the advantages of self-inflating bag, TP's resuscitator, flow inflating bag over the other one, and it will be asked in the exam if you are in a manned station. Okay, right. So fine. So when you start PPV, you should need to remember that you should choose an appropriate size mask. The mask should cover the mouth and nose of the baby. It should not come onto the eyes of the baby. When you place the mask, you should always remember that you should be chin up. So you start from the chin and bring it onto the nose of the baby, and you should support the chin of the baby by using your easy clamp technique. Okay, so I think all of you are aware. And while holding the chin, providing chin lift for the baby, remember that don't hyperextend the neck of the baby. Okay, so that is what beginners always would do. In an enthusiasm, they would want to lift the chin so that the neck becomes hyperextended, and it is kind of, it obstructs the airway rather than opening it up. So when you start PPV, you need to provide PPV at a rate of 40 to 60 per minute. And this is how you ensure that you provide 40 to 60 rate per minute. So you breathe, or you say squeeze, and then 2, 3. So you say breathe 2, 3, breathe 2, 3. So whenever you say breathe, you have to squeeze the bag, and when you say 2, 3, you have to release the bag. So breathe 2, 3, breathe 2, 3. So that is how you provide positive pressure ventilation at a rate of 40 to 60 per minute. So when you initiate positive pressure ventilation, it is you have to also ensure that the positive pressure ventilation is provided effectively. Okay, so how will you ensure that the positive pressure ventilation is effective? So what you are expected to do is to provide 15 seconds of positive pressure ventilation and then see whether the heart rate is rising. So the response to positive pressure ventilation will be assessed by whether by increase in heart rate, which is the most reliable indicator, and then by looking at the chest rise. Okay, so if the heart rate is increasing, you should announce that heart rate is increasing, and you will continue the PPV. Okay, so for another 15 seconds, so that your 30 seconds of PPV is over. Okay, that completes the step of positive pressure ventilation. If the heart rate is not increasing but chest is moving, okay, then also you can continue positive pressure ventilation that moves the chest, and then do an assessment after 15 seconds. Okay, so if either heart rate is increasing or the chest is moving, you can continue positive pressure ventilation. If chest is not heart rate is not increasing and chest is not moving, if both are not happening, then you are expected to do what is called as ventilation corrective steps until chest movement happens with PPV. Okay, so what is this ventilation corrective steps? So you have to remember this mnemonic MR SOPA. Okay, so M is mask adjustment. So you reapply the mask, consider two-hand technique for holding the mask, reposition the airway, place head neutral or slightly extended. So after completing these two steps, again try PPV and reassess the chest movement. Okay, so if the chest is not moving, then again you do the next two steps, suction mouth and nose, and then open the mouth of the baby by lifting the jaw forward. So after doing these two steps, again you will try PPV and reassess the chest movement. If again it is not happening, you can either go for pressure increase or you can use an alternate airway. If you think still even with pressure increment, chest is not moving. Okay, so you will do this ventilation corrective measures. Once you note that chest is rising, okay, then you will continue. So announce when chest is moving and continue PPV that moves the chest for the next 30 seconds and then do a heart rate assessment. Okay, so this is how you will ensure effective positive pressure ventilation, not simply positive pressure ventilation. So after 15 seconds of PPV, you should assess whether you are providing effective PPV by noting whether the heart rate is rising and chest is moving. Okay, right. So second assessment, that is after 30 seconds of effective PPV, that is a PPV that moves the chest. So now this second assessment is done. So if the heart rate is more than 100 per minute, then you will continue PPV at 40 to 60 breaths per minute until the baby has a spontaneous effort. If the heart rate is between 60 and 99, then you will reassess the ventilation. Ventilation corrective steps may be necessary. So if you are providing adequate ventilation, heart rate should rise above 100. If the heart rate is below 60, then you have to reassess ventilation. Ventilation corrective steps or intubation may be necessary here, and you have to start chest compression and use 100% oxygen. Okay, so this is the next step down the algorithm, which we will discuss in detail. So this completes our PPV. Okay, so I may not be able to cover all the aspects of positive pressure ventilation here, but I would like to comment about salient points. So once you have provided positive pressure ventilation, then this baby would require a post-resuscitation care and the team debriefing, right? So post-resuscitation care is also divided into our Indian NRP into two different components. If the baby received PPV for less than a minute, then baby would be kept under what is called as observational care. And if the baby is a baby received PPV for more than a minute, this baby would require post-resuscitation care in NICU. So in observational care, you are expected to monitor the baby every 15 minutes for heart rate, color, perfusion, temperature, everything. And then you should assess the feeding of the baby. If there are any concerns, you can shift the baby to post-resuscitation care. Okay, right. Fine. So if the response to this is no, like when heart rate remains less than 60, then you have to go for the next step. Okay. So as I told you, observational care for PPV less than 30 minutes. So you will assess every 30 minutes for 2 hours, not every 15 minutes. And then you should ensure breastfeeding, post resuscitation care, shift to NICU, and intensive monitoring. Okay. So you should also remember that when you have to give prolonged positive pressure ventilation, you may have to empty the stomach by inserting a orogastric tube, because prolonged PPV can inflate the stomach and interfere with ventilation of the lungs. So you need to use appropriate size orogastric tube. Usually 8 size is preferred, and you have to know how it is being inserted. So it is you measure from uh, bridge of the nose to the tragus, and then midway between xiphoid and umbilicus. This is how we measure nowadays, not before, not from ala nasi to lobule and then to xiphoid process. Okay, so you need to know how do you measure this, right? Okay. Then comes the as part of the ventilation corrective steps, or if as a prelude to starting coordinated chest compression and ventilation, you are expected to intubate the baby. So endotracheal intubation, all of you should be very well aware of. So you also have to remember how you can decide the depth of insertion of endotracheal tube. So earlier we were using, weight of the baby, average weight of the baby plus uh, plus 6. Now we are using this formula, nasotracheal length, that is you measure from the columella, that is bridge of the nose, this nasal septum in fact, to the tragus, and then you add 1 to it. So that is how you can measure the depth of insertion of the endotracheal tube. So the size of the endotracheal tube will be decided by the size of the baby. So less than 1 kilo, you will choose 2.5, 1 to 2 kilo, 2 to 3 kilos, you will use 3.5, and above 3 kilos, 3.5 or 4 you can choose. Okay, right. So once you, as part of ventilation corrective measures, or if the baby requires chest compression, you should preferably intubate the baby. While you are intubating the baby, you have to provide free flow oxygen. You should ensure that the tube is in place. You should not take more than 20 seconds to intubate a baby. And then you should make sure that air entry is equal. So to confirm the position of the endotracheal tube, you can either look for the condensation in the endotracheal tube, the heart rate going up, color of the baby improving, oxygen saturation improving, and then by doing auscultation, you can identify whether the tube is in lungs, or by doing an epigastric auscultation, you can rule out if at all it has entered into the esophagus. Okay, so you have to ensure that the tube is in position. So if in resource rich settings, they would be using calorimeter to identify whether the tube, or EtCO2 monitor to identify whether the ET tube is in place. Or some people also recommend a video laryngoscope to look at the glottis and intubate the baby. Of course, I think we are better skilled. I think we have not used those devices for identifying the position, but we need to ensure that how you can ensure that the position of ET tube is in place by appropriate clinical methods. Okay. Right. So let us go to chest compression. So you have provided effective PPV for 30 seconds. At the end of effective PPV, if heart rate stays below 60, then you will start chest compression. Okay. When you are starting chest compression, please remember that you should intubate the baby. You should coordinate for better coordination with PPV, and then you should change it to 100% oxygen. You have to have ECG monitor preferably, and UVC catheterization may be preferred here according to the new algorithm. Okay, right. So how do you provide chest compression? Chest compression is provided by using two-thumb technique, or two-finger technique. So two-thumb technique is nowadays preferred over two-finger technique. Because the blood pressure achieved and The fatigue for the provider is blood pressure achieved is better, and fatigue provider fatigue is less when you use two thumb technique. Okay, so you need to remember that you have to flex the interphalangeal joints, and you should place them side by side. If it is a small baby, then you can place thumb or one thumb over the other. Otherwise, it is preferable to place the thumb side by side, and you should locate the nipple line, and then just below place your fingers, both the thumbs just below the nipple line and above the xiphoid tip. Okay, that is where the heart lies. Okay, and you should support the back of the baby by encircling the hand so that the baby lies against a firm surface. Okay, right. So when you are compressing, you should always remember that you should compress at least 1/3 of the AP diameter of the chest, because that is when the heart will be compressed between sternum and the spine, and cardiac output is kind of generated. Okay, so 1/3 anterior, 1/3 of the depth of AP diameter of the chest, right? So, and you need to coordinate compression and ventilation in a ratio of 3:1, so that 3 compressions and 1 ventilation happen every 2 seconds. So how you can ensure that? 1 and 2 and 3 and breathe in. So when you say 1 and 2 and 3 and, you should say, when you say 1, you provide compression, chest compression and release. When you say and, 2 compression and release, 3 compression and release. And when you are saying breathe and, you have to squeeze the back. So one person would be providing positive pressure ventilation and one person would be providing chest compression. So there should be 3 compressions and 1 ventilation in 2 seconds, so that in a minute you will provide 90 compressions and 30 ventilations. So if it is less than this, your chest compression is going to be ineffective, right? Okay. So now you have provided chest compression. So how long you are expected to provide chest compression? So you need to remember that PPV you provided for 30 seconds, but chest compression you are expected to provide for 45 to 60 seconds, not for 30 seconds. So if you provide for 45 to 60 seconds only, chest compression is supposed to be effective. So remember, at least 45 seconds of chest compression before next assessment. Okay. So at the end of assessment, if the heart rate stays below 60, then you will go ahead and administer medications. If the heart rate above 60, you will stop chest compression, but you will continue the positive pressure ventilation till it reaches above 100 and baby starts breathing on its own, right? So if the heart rate stays below 60 per minute, then you will go for medications. So what medication is required? IV epinephrine. So even after IV epinephrine, if heart rate persistently stays below 60, then you will consider hypovolemia and pneumothorax. Okay, so let us go to medications. So medication, the only medication which is recommended is to use epinephrine, 1 in 10,000. All of you know how to prepare 1 in 10,000 solution. So the preferred route is intravenous, but you can choose intraosseous route also if intravenous is not available. So you should put emergency UVC catheter and then administer drug through that. So always remember that you will administer drug followed by a push of saline. Okay. So there is some modification in the dosage and the saline which has to be administered after this, that we will discuss later. So you need to remember that the dose is 0.1 to 0.3 ml per kg for intravenous. For endotracheal, 0.5 to 1 ml per kg. This has been simplified in the newer algorithm, which I will discuss subsequently, right? So you can repeat this dose every 3 to 5 minutes until you get a heart rate of more than 60 per minute. Okay, right. Volume expander, so you can use either normal saline, which is commonly used. So suspected anemia, O negative packed red blood cells may be used. So intravenous route or intraosseous again. So you have to give at the dose of 10 ml per kilo over 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, right. So there is you need to know about certain things which are peculiar or specific for preterm infants. Thermoregulation of preterm infant resuscitation is very important. You need to use appropriate room temperature, that is 23 to 25 degrees Celsius. You can use either food grade plastic bag for covering the baby. You can use exothermic mattresses, CAP for babies less than 32 weeks. So you need to provide CPAP because CPAP in these babies will reduce the risk of death, BPD. So in a spontaneously breathing preterm infant, it is preferable to use CPAP than intubate the baby. So during PPV, you have to remember that FiO2 should be between 21 and 30% in all babies less than 35 weeks of gestation. Above 35 weeks, you will start with room air. Okay, so this is important. So you will not start resuscitation with 100% oxygen in any of the baby when you are starting PPV. Above 35 weeks, room air. Below 35 weeks, 21 to 30%. So when the baby needs chest compression, then only you will switch to 100% oxygen. Okay. So this table summarizes the salient differences between NRP 7th edition and NRP 8th edition. So what is the change? So the change is umbilical cord management plan has been added to 4 pre-birth questions, replacing how many babies. So I just mentioned it when I started this presentation. So the 4 pre-birth questions will be gestational age, amniotic fluid clear, how many babies are there, and additional risk factors. So here, how many babies have been changed to umbilical cord management plan? Whether you need to do a delayed umbilical cord clamping or not, that has to be discussed. So initial steps has been reordered to better reflect common practice. So initial steps initially was providing warmth and maintaining normal temperature, positioning the airway, clear secretions if needed, dry and stimulate. Now it has been changed into warm, dry stimulate, position airway, suction if needed. So suction has been put in as the least priority. So warmth anyway you will be providing by taking the baby to the warmer. So you remember that it is DSP. Okay, dry, stimulate, and position the airway. Right? Dry, stimulate, position, suction is the least priority. Warmth anyway you will provide. So dry, stimulate, and position. Okay, right. So an electronic cardiac monitor is recommended earlier in the algorithm. So this is important. So it's the preferred method for assessing the heart rate during chest compression. So when an alternative airway becomes necessary, a cardiac monitor is recommended for the most accurate assessment. So here, old NRP said that when you are starting chest compression itself, you use. When your NRP recommends, probably one step earlier you can consider it when you are thinking of an alternative airway itself. Okay. So epinephrine intravenous intraosseous flush volume increased. Okay. So previously they used to say 0.5 to 1 ml saline flush is enough. Now it is 3 ml of normal saline flush. So 1 ml has been increased to 3 ml. And then epinephrine IV and endotracheal doses have been simplified for educational efficiency. The dosage range is unchanged. Okay, so the range recommended even now is 0.01 to 0.03 for IV or IO and 0.05 to 0.1 for endotracheal. But for simplicity, you can just say that instead of this range, you can keep it as 0.02 and 0.1 for endotracheal. Okay, right? So this is the simplification. The dose range remains same, but it has been simplified. Okay, expanded time frame for cessation of resuscitative efforts. So this is again important. It used to be 10 minutes of resuscitation. If there is a confirmed absence of heart rate after 10 minutes of resuscitation, it is reasonable to stop resuscitative efforts. However, the decision to continue or discontinue should be individualized. Here, this duration time frame has been increased to 20 minutes now. So what new NRP says is, if confirmed absence of heart rate after all appropriate steps performed, consider cessation of resuscitation efforts around 20 minutes after birth. So decision should be individualized on patient and contextual factors. Okay, so it has to be contextual and individualized for each and every patient. Contextual in the sense whether it is a resource limited or resourceful setting, whether the parents can afford the treatment and whether they are willing to go ahead all the way. So this is a pictorial depiction of the changes which has happened. Okay. So the same thing which was tabulated in the earlier slide, which is the pictorial depiction. So antenatal counseling, some change has been done, team briefing, equipment check, okay, and then using ECG monitoring here for monitoring the heart rate. Okay, so all those things, newer changes have been included. So this is a algorithm itself, which is a pictorial depiction of the algorithm. Okay, right. So let us just go through some of the case scenarios, which probably some of you might have listened to in the earlier presentations. Shall we go ahead with scenarios, or we'll take up questions, ma'am?
I think you finish off the scenarios, Dr. Channakumar,
Okay,
and then
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So here is scenario 1. A baby born at 38 weeks gestation, delivered by normal vaginal delivery, cried immediately after birth with normal tone. So birth has happened, and 3 questions you need to ask. So term, yes, it is 38 weeks. Tone is good, and baby is breathing and crying. Okay. So what are the 3 questions? So it's your 3 questions I myself have answered. So term, tone, and breathing or crying. So if answer to all 3 are yes, then baby will receive what is called as routine care, or baby will stay with the mother. Okay, here you will provide warmth to the baby, maintain normal temperature, position the airway, clear secretions if necessary, dry and ongoing evaluation. During ongoing evaluation, you will ensure that baby is breastfed, skin to skin contact is provided, and you will also have a question on when to clamp the umbilical cord if the baby cries soon after birth, right? Okay. So a scenario can be as simple as this. So don't expect that your examiner is so lenient and he has asked very simple question. So there may be some catch in it. So be careful when you are expecting when you are facing a very simple question, because NRP you may mess up with NRP. So please try to remember that, remember all the steps by heart, algorithm by heart. Okay, right. The next scenario is a baby born at 40 weeks gestation by emergency LSCS in view of fetal distress and meconium stained amniotic fluid. Birth weight 3.5 kilos, cried immediately after birth and normal tone. So again, what questions you will ask? The same questions: term, breathing or crying, tone. So all 3 are yes. Again, this baby is going to require the same. So the catch here is you have been given meconium stained amniotic fluid. So all of you would think that meconium, if there is meconium stained amniotic fluid, you need to provide endotracheal suctioning. It is not the case. Okay, 2015 NRP itself, whether even if the baby is vigorous or non-vigorous, you have to go ahead with the steps of resuscitation like any other baby. Okay, you will provide initial steps. You will start positive pressure ventilation. You don't have to put endotracheal suctioning. Okay, so the vigorous, non-vigorous baby doesn't make any difference as long as far as the resuscitation is concerned. But when you will provide meconium stained, if endotracheal suctioning, if there is meconium stained liquor, only if you think this meconium is obstructing your PPV, okay, as part of your MR SOPA, okay, MRSOPA, okay. In that O, if you think that there is, yes part, if you think that this meconium is sitting and blocking the airway, you can provide suctioning as part of ventilation corrective measures, but not before that, even if the baby is non-vigorous. Okay, so this is what is the new change, and this change has been retained in 2020 NRP also. Okay, so if there is meconium stained baby, if the baby, whether irrespective of whether the baby is vigorous or not vigorous, you will follow the normal algorithm. There is no change. Okay, right. So in scenario 3, you have a preterm infant born at 34 weeks gestation to primary with GDM by normal vaginal delivery. Mother received antenatal steroids. Baby is limp. What will you do next? So here, what are the 3 questions you will ask? Term, the baby is not a term. So baby is not crying. Tone is also less, right? So all 3 questions are no. So remember, even if one question is no, you will go down the algorithm. So all 3 are no, so you are going to provide initial steps. So you will remember the new sequence of initial steps. Okay, so the examiner may ask the new sequence. So you will follow the initial steps, assess the heart rate. So after the initial steps, baby cried, tone improved, but has labored breathing and cyanosis. So if the baby, what is the assessment after initial steps? The baby should not be having apnea, baby should not be gasping, and heart rate should be more than 100. So if all three are there, then you will see whether the baby has normal breathing or labored breathing. If the baby has labored breathing and cyanosis, what you will do? You will position the baby, clear the airway for any secretion. You will monitor SpO2, and then you will provide CPAP to the baby or supplemental oxygen. So here it is a preterm baby, so you will provide CPAP. So you will be asked question how you will provide CPAP in the delivery room. So you should be able to say the devices which will be useful for providing CPAP in the delivery room. Okay. So fourth scenario, preterm born at 28 weeks gestation to a primee by emergency LSCS in view of PPROM and fetal distress. So baby is limp. How will you proceed with resuscitation? So here again, our questions are no, no, no. So you will go down the algorithm. So you will provide initial steps. At the end of initial steps, baby is gasping. So if the baby is gasping, then what we are supposed to do? You are supposed to start positive pressure ventilation. Okay. So you have started positive pressure ventilation. You have connected SpO2 monitor, right? So after 30 seconds of positive pressure ventilation, SpO2 60, heart rate 80. So what you will do? You have to do ventilation corrective measures, look for chest movement, and baby may require endotracheal intubation as part of ventilation corrective measures. Okay. So after doing ventilation corrective measures, heart rate has improved to 120 beats per minute. SpO2 is good. Baby has intercostal retractions and grunting. What is the next step? So here baby will be shifted for post resuscitation care and you will consider CPAP in this baby, right? So fifth scenario, a 40 weeks gestation term baby delivered by emergency LSCS in view of fetal distress. Meconioin LICA was present. Baby did not cry immediately after birth and baby was limp. What will you do? So here baby is term. So the answer to the first question is yes, but baby did not cry and baby's tone is reduced. So as I said, all three questions to be yes, so that you can provide routine care. So even if one question is no, you will go down the algorithm. So you will start the initial steps. So after the initial step, heart rate remains less than 100 and baby is gasping. So you will start positive pressure ventilation. So after PPV, your heart rate is 70. So it is not more than 100 and SpO2 60. How will you manage? So ventilation corrective steps. Remember, this is a meconium stain baby. So if you think this meconium is obstructing the airway, you may have to provide endotracheal suctioning for meconium here as part of ventilation corrective measures. Okay. After ventilation corrective step,